Hey everyone, welcome to the channel, and for today's topic we're going to be talking about living in the Philippines on a limited budget in 2020. Now when I'm talking about living on a limited budget, we're talking about a spendable income of less than 1,000 US dollars per month for a single person. And if you're not sure what a spendable income is, I've posted a video that talks about the difference between your net income and your spendable income. If you haven't watched it already, I definitely recommend you go check that video out. One thing I do want to mention before we get started is for the last 9 months that I have been living here in the Philippines so far, 8 months of that time we've been under various states of quarantines, lockdowns, travel restrictions. A lot of businesses have been closed, transportation has been shut down or at least severely limited. So a lot of things, a lot of the dynamics of how you live, where you shop, what you can buy, a lot of that has been slightly affected at various times. So that has been a little bit of an impact on living here, especially on a limited budget. Now, if you're kind of curious about what my house is like, our living conditions, what everything is like for my budget income level, I've already done sort of a tour of our house, so I recommend you go watch that video if you're just kind of curious about what the living standards are like within my budget range. And also I posted a video that is a breakdown of our monthly budget. This is the projected budget. This is the before the month happens, what we think our expenses are going to be, but we've broken down all of our bills. This is essentially like the average that we've been having our expenses throughout the last 8 months. I will be posting an actual end of the month complete budget breakdown in a future video. So to get started off, when you are going to be on a limited budget, one thing you have to realize is your housing is going to be on the lower end, let's just say it. It's not going to be close to the standards that you are going to be used to from the West. If you're on that limited income point, you're not going to have a 20,000, 30,000 peso condo in Metro Manila. You're not going to have a nice house, out in a little suburban area. Your income is going to be to the point where you're limited to maybe something 4, 5, 6,000 a month, similar to what we have. You might have a little bit higher income to where you might be able to afford a 10,000, 12, or even 14,000 house, apartment, or something like that. But typically, you're not going to have a whole lot of money to pay for your housing. Part of that is because your number one expense while you're here, especially when you're on a limited budget, your number one expense is going to be your food and groceries. I'm not going to go too much into it. The whole food situation, where to go, best places to find it, that's a completely separate video in itself. I'm just going to say that if you are able to start eating locally, at least some of the time, there are just a lot of options, ways that you can keep your food expenses from getting out of control. One thing you need to do though is make sure you aren't constantly going out and just grabbing up a bunch of import goods, canned foods, packaged foods, going out to Western style restaurants, things like that, because that will totally destroy your budget. One of the other things obviously is before you even come over here, you have to have at least a basic budget kind of starting to get set up and defined. If you have done your research properly, you've come over here, you've done your scouting trips, you've figured out the areas, you've looked at different listings, you've already figured out what your spendable income is, and you can kind of figure out around what your rent is going to look like, how much you're going to have for utilities and meals. Once you have that basic budget broken down and you move over here, you need to try and stick to that budget as best you can. Obviously, for the first few months, you're still working it out. You're kind of seeing how much is my water every month, how much is my power every month, based on my living conditions, what is my rent like. You can slowly start making small adjustments to that budget, but you need to do what you can to have that budget clearly defined and that you're following your budget. There are obviously going to be certain expenses that come up, especially when you're first getting started, that you might not be thinking about. You're not considering it. That's why you also want to make sure you have not only an emergency savings to cover, you're basically covering your emergency medical expenses, things like that, but you also want to have a little bit of money set aside because when you first move here, you're going to have to get your furniture, your appliances, your cooking utensils, all these different things that you're going to have to put an investment into initially. You want to make sure you have those funds, or else it's just going to be a very challenging, slow start, like what I've been having to deal with. There are a lot of different factors as far as the housing. I had much lower expectations before I came here. I did all my research. Vina was going out, looking at places that were within our budget range, so I could kind of have an idea of what places would look like. We got lucky with the place that we found. This is easily 2 or even 3 times the size of other listings in our area for the same price range. It's still not the same living conditions as what I'm used to in the West, but it's comfortable enough, it's cheap enough that we're doing okay. It exceeded my expectations, so it's nice. It's not a nice house, it's not a fancy condo, but it gets the job done. We're comfortable enough after we've done some fixing up and taken care of a few other factors like pest control. There are certain other things that you really want to think about is with your budget, you're going to be looking at every single little expense you buy, and you need to be keeping track of those things. You're going to see that there are certain things that you're going to eventually decide, hey, I need to buy this. Things just aren't working out. I need to get an upgrade. One of those things, obviously, is if you can afford it, definitely get the air conditioning. Not having air conditioning is not just a problem about the temperature, but also the humidity. And what I'm talking about is when you don't have an air conditioner, if you have fans, air coolers, you can keep the temperature in your living area cool enough that you're not worried about overheating, of different health concerns. It's comfortable enough when you're in the presence of those fans and stuff. The problem is the humidity inside of your residence is going to be greatly increased. There are times, because you're going to be taking showers, you're going to be cooking, all that stuff that increases the humidity even further, to where the humidity inside of our house is actually much greater than it is outside. Over time, this is causing mold and mildew to appear on walls, areas that we can be cleaned, but we're finding that even in the closet, luggage, clothing, different items like that, they're starting to get this white mold, mildewy stuff on it. We're having to go through and clean everything out. We have found these little disposable dehumidifiers that are kind of helping out, but we're still using them a little bit. We're not quite sure how they're going to work out in the long run, but anything that helps, helps. The main thing is air conditioner would have totally made everything better, not just for the comfort level, but also decreasing that humidity, the spoilage of certain food items because of the humidity. It's just a major pain in the ass. So if you can get an air conditioner, if you can move into a place that already has an air conditioner, even if it's an older unit, yes, the air conditioner is going to increase your power bill, but it's going to make up for it in other areas. So living here for the last 8 months on this limited budget, I won't count the first month because we were staying in a condo doing our house hunting. We were spending a little bit more money than normal. It wasn't our typical monthly budget. But for the last 8 months of living here in our house, we've been doing okay. We've been sticking to the budget as best we can. Every once in a while, there are a few expenses that we go over. We're able to compensate for it. There's never been a time that we haven't had food, that we haven't had the ability to go do our laundry. We haven't ever not been able to pay any of our bills, our utilities, rent, something like that. So we always have what we need. It's just every once in a while, if we do have an unintended expense, that means there's a little bit less money we have to cover other things, such as getting additional utensils, new cookware, maybe some new furniture or appliance, things like that. You know, we've been trying to save up for a nice microwave, but there's just a couple things hit here and there. So now December, going to be Christmas time, we're going to have expenses for the whole Christmas stuff. So we probably won't be able to get the microwave until January next month. But essentially, well, actually, I'll step back a little bit. Right now, we're still at the end of November, so December, that's when we have those expenses. It's January that we'll be able to do that. Anyways, so as far as just living here on this limited budget, yeah, there are challenges. There are things that we wish we had more money for, but we make do with what we have, and we're doing okay. And again, if you haven't watched my budget video, you'll see that my income my spendable income is only $600 US per month, and that's covering 2 adults, not just myself, we're still managing okay as long as we're able to stick to the budget and not go over on things. One thing that I will point out though is you definitely want to look into getting some kind of health insurance. It's something that so far I have not been able to afford. We just have had too many other expenses in the way. But there have already been a couple situations where I had to pay a good chunk of money out of pocket to cover certain expenses, medical type expenses, that if I had some kind of health insurance, even just basic health insurance coverage, it might not have fully covered those expenses, but it would have covered enough of it to make it a little bit easier. And right now I have certain issues that I need to go have taken care of. I don't have the money to do so. I do have some money in savings, but this isn't an emergency enough to where I'm going to pull the money out of my savings to cover these issues. I'm just going to stick with it as best I can, and I just recommend that if you're able to go out and get some kind of insurance, look into it. It's going to be difficult when you're living on a limited budget, but just try and figure out if that's an option for you or not. If anybody has any questions, comments, or anything like that, you're definitely free to leave comments in the video or send us an email. We'll get back to you as best we can. I just hope this has been a little bit of useful information, and I'm sorry about the format and quality and everything, but still getting used to the whole YouTube thing. If you're not a subscriber, it would definitely help if you do subscribe to the channel. If you find these videos to be informational, useful, go back, browse some of the other videos we've done in the past, take a look at some of the videos that I'm going to be posting in the future, and hopefully this is going to be something that is useful or entertaining to you. So thanks for watching and have a good one.